Hello everybody, I'm Mark from Overland Forward and welcome back to the channel. So I've been back in the UK for probably about 10 days from my Baltics trip. Clocked in close to 4,000 miles over the period of 6 weeks, visited 9 countries. L322 desperately needs a service after that, oil and filter changes, all that good stuff, so that's going to be taken care of in the coming weeks. But like a lot of things, every time I go on these trips, and I've mentioned this before on the channel, you sort of figure out what works and what doesn't work. And this trip's been no different. So I came back with a fairly long list of things that I need to change, some modifications I wanted to make, and sort of reshuffle things around based on the feedback and how things worked when we're away. So a couple of things for you. Snorkels come up on the channel a lot. And I read a lot about people wanting to put snorkels on an L322 and how do you go do it. My opinion, and of course the great thing about opinions, everyone has got one, is I really don't like them. I don't think they're necessary, especially with the wading depth that you have with these types of vehicles. And for me, I just don't think they're necessary. I'm certainly not going to be running this thing through rivers. I think you're just asking for problems, and the electrics are going to go long before you ingest water in the engines. Anyway, those of you that follow the channel know that I've been to Spain an awful lot. And one thing that comes up a lot is dust. Now, because you don't have a snorkel and the way the intakes are actually buried in the front wings here on the L322s, I put in a pre-filter. Now, these are from a company called AB Off-Road. You can get them. These are 4-inch socks that go over the top of a snorkel. Now, the great thing about a 4-inch sock, or an opening here, is on the L322, especially with the version that I've got, is the inlet is on the side of the wing. So the side vents are actually there for a reason, to get air into the air intake. And the way that this works is air is sucked in through the vents of the side of the wings. It goes up through the chamber, which is separated by the plastic inner wheel well, to an opening that you can see here on the very, very front of the wing. Now, I'd be curious, I've not taken the inner plastic shell off of this, so I don't know if that rubber foam piece is still there, but that is there to sort of stop water coming in, as well as other things that might be flying around at the front of the vehicle. So the air is flowed in through those side vents and then sucked in as the engine needs it. But that opening is 4 inches. So what you can do is you can actually get a 4-inch foam pad, and get them in different colors, just happen to be red, and you can put the sock over the inlet tube that goes up against the wing. Now, it's really difficult to show you, but what I've done before is I've got these pads. They're 4 inches, they're square, and I open up that tube where the airbox is, put the foam pad in, shut it, close it, and it's good to go. So it's acting as a pre-filter to sort of take most of the dust out of that primary turbo, or that inlet where it goes to the turbo. Now, one thing you can do here is if you've got a K&N filter, or you go get a K&N oil cleaning kit, you can actually spray the front of these and then put oil in here as well, which will clear most of the muck and everything you get in from that filter. Anyway, these are really, really inexpensive to do. I think 3 of these are about £25. You can get the flat ones, again, about £20. Put some oil in it, covers it up, and then you've got a pre-filter sock on your airbox. Now, whether you do both sides, I only do the driver's side because that's the primary filter. That's the one that gets most of the use. The secondary one on the TDV8s only comes in when you go above about 2,500 RPM. So I really don't think it's necessary on that side, so I use those. Anyway, great idea for a pre-filter on your airbox, and even if you're driving around in traffic, it'd be interesting to see how much muck actually gets caught up in that. Now, when I built the box for my water heater and the Egon water hub, I didn't have the vehicle, and I think building it the way I built it was totally wrong. And what I've learned on this trip is all of the attachments and the switches were behind the back of the driver's seat in that box. And what I found myself constantly doing is having to go to the driver's side, go into the window, press the pump, run the cable out this way, and it was beginning to get cumbersome. I was dragging water all over the place, and I realized it was a pretty bad design. Now, the box itself to hold the water heater and the pumps is good. I just had to move all the controls for the water. So I've done that In addition to that, I've been trying to figure out where I put it. Now, I could go bend some panels to put on the side of the load space, but I've had my road chef in the loft for about a year, and my intention was always to put it in. And so I've made up this box to house the road chef and then put all of my water connections in here as well. So I've moved everything to the rear of the vehicle. Now it's really easy now for me to hook up my water connections, hit the pumps, get water straight out the back, also run to the shower on the other side of the vehicle than the way I had it before. So all I've had to do is to make up this box, and you've seen me make up this box with 25mm square tubing. It's really simple to do. I managed to knock this up in an hour or so. So I got the Road Chef hooked up to my Red Vision system onto a 30 amp fuse. All of that is wired in, so now I can actually control that directly off of my Red Vision system. These Road Chefs, like travel buddies, exactly the same things. The way that they generally work is you preheat them, get to where you're going to go, shove everything in to either reheat, heat, or bake things in there. So it's great for pizza and pies and things like that. And then when you're done, you turn everything off. So I cannot turn this on unless I turn it on directly through my Red Vision system. And that means that all of this is protected from draining any of the batteries. Now, those of you who got water tanks in your vehicles, there's this really simple, quick mod you can do to remove all bacteria. So I found this from, I think it was the Raptor's Garage guys before they had the split. Paul put in a water tank, I think it was on his Discovery, and he got it from a company called Forby. And it's an ultraviolet light that apparently removes all algae and starts killing off any germs and bacteria in your tanks. Now, I also use aqua tabs. I drop sort of a handful of those in. Normally this is running as a 50-litre tank, and normally I run probably about 45 litres of water in at any one time. So I figure out what it is, chuck the aqua tabs in, and the vehicle rocking and rolling around basically will dilute the aqua tabs. I'm still going to use that, but I'm also got this ultraviolet light. And again, that's hooked into my Red Vision system. I've got it hooked in where it can't be turned off unless I actually physically go in there and turn it off. We'll see how that goes. It was real easy to do. All I did was I just took a step drill, very, very carefully just drilled into the plastic and then pulled the shavings up. I could actually get my hand in the top of where the opening was just to make sure that no filings had gone in there or shavings had gone in it. And then when I got it to just about right, I think it was 18mm, I could then just push the light into the bottom and then hook it back up just through a positive and negative directly into my Red Vision system. So it's in there, it's good to go. For those of you who want to know about my water system, I have a filter after the tank, before the pumps, and then I have another filter on the back here before you drink your water. So I've got two sets of filters to make sure that the water coming out of the tank into the pumps, out of the pumps, into the output here is filtered. I have tested the water, it's crystal clear, there's no problems with anything like that. Inside the water, it doesn't really get any bacteria. And because the vehicle's moving and sloshing around, I think anything that sort of sits in there probably gets killed off anyway. And with the aqua tabs in there, that kills it as well and keeps everything fresh and drinkable. Now, when I built that box to house the water heater, the pumps and all of that good stuff, I ran my compressor output chuck to the side of the box. To this day, I still don't know why I've done it. However, I've done some research and I always wanted on the outside of the vehicle, but I had no real way of figuring out how to run a braided airline to either the side or the back of the vehicle. And like a lot of things, I was cruising around on YouTube and I found that there is a bung at the very, very back of the L322 bumper on the crash structure. If you don't have a tow kit or the wiring for the tow kit, there's a bung in there that you can pull out. So if you put that in, it actually comes with the right wiring through the bung. So I found that. I've got a wiring kit on this thing. I didn't put it on. I already sort of inherited it. And found a way that I could run a braided airline from the tow bar in through the vehicle. I cut the grommet and then Sikaflexed it all back in. So it's pretty watertight. I don't think any water is going to get in. And then ran that through the bottom of the load space, past where the compressor housing is, and then hooked it up to the back of my compressor, which is on the back of my kitchen. Tested it all out, works great. So this is just a combination of ARB mounts to allow you to put that outside air chuck onto the vehicle, screw it in with a couple of M4 self-tappers, and now I figured out how to get that to the end of the vehicle. So when I want to air up, it's quite simple. I can just plug in my hose, go around to both sides from the back of the vehicle. I've got an extension cable, I've got an in-deflate. It will work from the back, either side, either driver's side or the passenger side. Hook it up, press the compressor. Robert's your father's brother. So that's a real simple mod. Pretty happy the way that's turned out. It only took about half an hour. All of this came out anyway because I had to clean it all up. It was covered in pine needles and all the rest of the crap that you accumulate when you go on these trips. So it was easy to just push all this back, lift it up, and then be able to get into the back and then run all the hoses to make sure I've got it all connected. So that's another real easy mod. But that again takes the compressor fittings away from getting into the vehicle and having it on the outside. Oh, so while I was away, Renogy were running a 25% sale on their 100 amp hour lithium batteries. I mentioned before that I got a 100 amp hour lithium battery buried in the battery box at the bottom here underneath the secondary fuse board. To me, I always wanted more power in this thing for a number of reasons. One, I still have not got my 12 volt run from the front of the vehicle to the back to charge it through my BMS. It's something I'm going to do. But also with inside the deal that Renogy had, it had a Bluetooth monitor and it had the Renogy One control pack. So I think that was £1 that they offered it. So I went ahead, pulled the trigger. So I've now got 200 amp hours of lithium power buried down the back here. It's all nestled in. I've got it wedged in there. I've got foam in there as well to make sure the battery is nestled on top of the other battery. I've got it configured where the Bluetooth monitor will monitor both batteries. And the great thing is the BMS itself will actually load balance the power coming out from the batteries. Although most of the connections I have is on the top battery, not the bottom battery. So although it manages the balancing of the batteries, I still see a little bit more draw coming from that top battery purely because I've got more accessories hooked up to it when I actually use them. So anyway, that's in. That didn't take long to do. It was just a case of bolting it in, running the cables from one battery to the other. And then with my BMS, which powers all of this through a massive Anderson cable, what you have to do is to make sure that they stay in sync. And the way the BMS charges is you have to go positive to one battery, negative to the second battery. So that was quite simple to do. I didn't have to extend any cables. It was already sort of, the cables were long enough to be able to do that. So all of that works. I've actually done it through shore power. I plugged it into the house, charged everything up, and I can monitor it either from the Renogy One, which is sitting here on the side. It's not the best place, but we'll see how that works. Or I can run it through on the app as well, and then the app will show me everything that's going on with my batteries. So that's another really easy mod for me. I've now got 200 amp hours of usable power. And when you think about the amount of power that I could be pulling at any point in time, I could have my water heater running. I could have my road chef running. The pumps could be running on the water as well. That starts drawing quite a lot of power. Add in the fridge, which is running pretty much all the time. I'm going to be running some tests. I hope to see if I can go back to Spain sometime this year. I'm going to run a test to see how much draw I get when I turn all this on sort of a normal day over a period of, say, 10 hours or 12 hours. It'd be interesting to see. Now, lastly, I've been talking about this for a while. I took out my 30 split seat and then put my water box behind it. It was clear when the last trip that we had that we were overloaded with gear. And having the seats in there at that point in time, the 70 split seats, we were putting luggage on top of it. Now, the seats are in really good condition. They had virtually no use. This was a chauffeur's car for a long period of time. So clearly the back seat on the passenger side had some wear, but nothing noticeable. So what I did was I took all of the seats out, cleaned absolutely everything. I moved my heater, my water heater and the Egon water hubs into the center of the vehicle. And now I'm going to build two load spaces. I built one, and you can see here, this is just a flat surface to put things like luggage in there. So I can put anything in there that's sort of on a flat surface. It's on legs as well, so I've got plenty of room to sort of put things underneath of it, underneath there. But it gives me a flat surface to start stacking things. So things like, you know, carry-on luggage, wheelies, those sorts of things can go in there. And that will then allow me to not put it on the seats and not screw the seats They were getting pretty dusty with all the crap that was getting in there anyway. So they all came out. It was only 4 bolts to pull the whole thing, 2 connectors. Whole thing came out, now sitting in my lockup with the extra seat that's in there as well. So I built that load space again. It's with a 25mm tubing. Took about half an hour to put it together. I'm going to build another one behind the driver's seat, but build it to a box. So it's probably going to be big enough to hold all of my camping gear. So things like the cot, the J-cot that's in there, pump-up mattress, table, chair. So those sorts of things are sort of like a tube, but they're not really crushable, will go in there. And I've got enough space there to be able to build it. And then I'll put a lid on the top of it. And then my Step 22 bags can go on the top of there. And I can stack those in the side and then put them in sort of lengthways, if you will. So that will give me a lot more storage in there. Now, the great thing about when I built all this is that all this can come out. So the 3 separate load spaces that I built, or the boxes that I built, I'm going to put M6 bolts in there and then riv nut them to the center box. It's not going to move. The whole thing will be pretty rigid. It's not bolted down to actually where the seats go. There's no real way of doing that. But it's heavy enough where it's not going to move around. And I'm going to have to do something drastic off-road to get it to bang, to start moving. But all of that can come out. And I think that'll end up being just like 4 bolts, pull out the sides. The center one can come out as well because it's all hooked up to an Anderson plug that runs all the wiring. The connections for the water, simple, easy John Guest connectors will be able to pop out. And I could get this out as well. This one itself will come out. So all of this was built to be modular. All of it was built to be able to come apart relatively quickly. So I reckon within less than 45 minutes, I could have this out. I could have the other 3 boxes out. And if I really wanted to put the seats back in, for whatever reason, I could probably put them back in. And within an hour and a half, have all of this gutted, 3 seats back in, load space back in. No one would even know that this has got all this kit or had all this kit in it. So that's the way I designed it. I mean, as I've said many, many times, this is version 2 of this. The water box and where all the water controls were, version 2 of that. You learn as you go. You go on these trips, you try stuff out, you figure out what works, what doesn't, and you make the modifications necessary. And then you go again and you see whether it works. And I think eventually over a period of time, you come to a point, hopefully I'm close, where you just say, you know what, enough. Everything's fine. Everything works. I'm happy with it. So all of this is built. I'm really happy with the way it's turned out. Love the Road Chef. I actually put some sausage rolls in it the other day and just let it run. I don't think there's any problems with any heat build-up in it. And the way that I built it is actually sitting on a box itself. Any of the carpet has been removed from underneath it or behind it. And this end is open. And so any heat, I think, will dissipate out this way. And there's a couple of holes I've drilled in the load space on top as well, so any heat could be pushed out. Although I might run into problems because the fridge is under here as well. So I don't know how much of that heat will actually go down and heat rises. I may have to look at putting some holes across the top there, but we'll see. One good thing about Red Vision is that it comes with 2 temperature gauges. I've got one in the back of the load space just to monitor what the temperatures are there. So I might be able to put one in here as well and just see what sort of temperatures you get built up in there. And if I begin to see them go too high, then I know I might need to put an extractor fan in there just to run it. But from what I've seen and what I know about the reviews on the Road Chef or even the Travel Buddy, even when you've got them on, you can still put your hand on them. They are insulated to a certain point. So you can put your hand there, and if you can put your hand there, it means the heat transfer is really not that bad. So we'll see how it goes, but pretty happy with that. Good to see how that goes in the future. And as I said, if I can get myself to Spain or Portugal, I might go do the Portugal coast and do the sand trails all the way north to south. It'll be great to be able to stack it up with pizzas and pies and who knows what to be able to see whether this actually works. So that's a wrap for this video. Go have a look at these. I think it's a really good idea to be able to put a pre-filter onto your air filter box. It's a really simple way to go do that. I will go run this. I will test it all out. I'll come back to you in the coming weeks and let you know how I've gone. I'm probably going to need to go down to Wales for a long weekend. And if that's the case, then I'm going to load this thing up with a couple of tents, throw some pies into the Road Chef, Got the kitchen already sorted out as well. We'll see how we go. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you like the video, please like the video. Don't forget to share it with your friends. Click and subscribe, click the bell notification. Channel growing. We just passed 2,500 subscribers. I thank each of you, every single one of you. Thank you very much. It means a huge amount to me as the channel continues to grow in the right direction, which is good. And hopefully the content is of interest to you as well. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.